Anybody signed in, Brian? Good evening.
Kelly and I would like to thank Mr. Paul Siegman's highway crew for placing pipes and ground cover over the open ditch area on Kruger Road near the site where Ryan Fisher lost his life on November 21st, 2014. Due to their professional efforts and work, this area is now providing a safer route for the drivers, residents, and pedestrians who travel on Kruger Road. And we were there and we saw them and they did a nice job. We had a flagman out and we're appreciative of what's there. We're hoping that top stuff stays on. I don't know what it is, but it looks good and it's even with the road.
Okay, Paul is here. He can answer that in a few minutes.
Okay.
We're actually not really done with it yet. We let it settle a little bit, probably put some more down, level off a little bit better, but we just wanted the rain to let push it down. That would be the final grade for that. We wanted it done before the end of this month.
Yeah, I brought you guys some donuts and coffee that one day because they were working so hard. All right, as we move forward to secure grant money to be used toward a sidewalk with the assistance of Mr. Rotello, we have been anticipating information from town engineer Tim Zuber since June. In June of 2015, the cost of a sidewalk was estimated to be around $500,000. We just received an email from Mr. Cliff that the cost has risen to over $900,000, and that is maybe a problem. We feel that the past information we have received is confusing and misleading. In the beginning, we were told that a sidewalk was too expensive and it would be more reasonable to increase the size of the shoulders on Kruger Road. Then we were told that placing a sidewalk on one side of the road would be more cost efficient. Who is making these decisions and making these estimates? And why did the estimated cost of the sidewalk move up from $500,000 to $945,000?
When Tim has his chance to talk, we'll let him explain that, because I think there's 4 people up here that want to know that as well.
From the start of our mission, we stated we are looking for grant money to cover the cost to increase safety measures on Kruger Road. Mr. Rotello located 2 grants, and now we are hoping that they will address the new higher monetary need of the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
I have questions from the last meeting. Quasar had advised you in a letter that they're no longer using sewage sludge. What are they using?
That's a reasonable question. They did say in that letter, I don't know if I can recall it all, it was greases, oils, and green stuff.
Yeah, I don't have the letter with me.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Okay.
Now,
yeah,
what, can you say what, it was greases and oils and something? Right. So that actually goes back to what they originally told us they were going to use in that facility, which is sort of interesting. They've gone backwards.
Okay. The article in the paper after the last meeting, it states that Quasar has upgraded its output from Class B to the safer Class A, and Cliff said there is no notification requirement for application of Class A material.
Right.
I understand that there is no permits or anything necessary for the spreading of Class A, but according to our law...
It's still against our law.
Our law.
It's still against town law. It's just for DEC rules don't require any notification.
Isn't there notification necessary for when they change at the plant going from Class B to Class A? Isn't that a modification in operations?
I think we determined that at least they're taking the position that it was not.
yeah, they took the position it is not. They're just simply hanging on to it longer. I think that was delineated in their letter. We are determining through our experts whether or not that is perhaps accurate, but
Okay.
that we know their position now. We have to analyze it.
Okay. And you were quoted again in the paper that they say they're not using biosolids anymore, and it's just in the tank long enough so more of the little critters die off. Are you happy with that answer?
That's what they're saying, yes.
Okay.
I used the word little critters, that was mine. It's,
Pardon?
the word little critters was mine. but-
Well, yeah, a lot more than little critters in there. All right, thank you.
Good evening. I have a question. I'm trying to learn more about the town government, and there's a motion by Matt on here, and I don't know if I can ask you a question before you read the motion.
You can ask anything you want at this point.
Okay, it has to refer to the request from Roselle to install streetlights on the corner of Forest Glen and Brandywine in the cul-de-sac, and then I have the copy of his letter asking for a request to install. Is this something the town does when someone needs streetlights? Because I know Gil was saying that there should be a light on the corner by the boulevard in, is it Norman or Kruger? Right on the corner, and I haven't seen a light go up there. So I was wondering, can anybody request a street light to be put?
Anybody can request. Our standard policy that we've been working to is we put them on, upon request, we would put them on, one on a cul-de-sac and one on major intersections or a major corner if indeed there is a corner in a road. So in this particular instance, our policy would allow one at the corner of Forest Glen and I think it's Brandywine, if I recall.
Yeah, that's what it says, Brandywine.
And then there would be one more down in the corner of the cul-de-sac. Because there is no intersection on the other end of Forest Glen, we would not be putting one there, although that's something we probably should consider just by the nature of a rather dark, lonely spot.
Now, is this a town-owned street or a
The
Roselle?
town, it is a town-owned street. The builder builds it, the developer builds it and then dedicates it to the town. The town owns the street. We now have the responsibility of maintaining it, the curbs, and the utilities.
Okay. And then to go back to something from a month ago that I said, we were talking about the Driftwood Motel. I noticed now that it has been clarified that those are townhouses. The ones that are there already are townhouses, and they want to build 3 more townhouses. That's what it said on the planning board.
All townhouses, just for the nature of the design. The townhouse is part of an individual or single-family residence, it is not a temporary, it's a hotel. It's a rental property, right?
Yeah, but it's not even on their website, though. If you go onto their website, they're not even available to rent on the website, just the rooms and then the square building, so. And,
I think
he
at the last,
also-
Tim, tell me if I'm wrong, but at the last planning board meeting that they were there, might have been 2 meetings ago, he said that they market these foreign. They have some kind of an agency that they market these foreign because people will come over for 2 or 3 weeks at a time with their family. And I think that's why they use the larger buildings. Now, I don't know if that's his plan for these 3.
Well, he also said at the planning board meeting that he has different services taking care of the lawn and plowing, and the very next day I was driving by, and it had to be his father out on a lawnmower trying to cut that lawn.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there's services myself,
Yeah, actually,
but,
I think the people who were at that meeting made it pretty clear to him that he needs to do a good job of keeping up appearances.
right. Okay, thank you.
Julie?
Good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Is it on?
It should be on.
Okay, now maybe you can hear me. I just wanted to give you a couple of updates and a question about Quasar. This past weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the New York State PTA held their conference, and it was here in Niagara Falls. It was attended by over a couple hundred members. And the New York State PTA has a membership of 100,000 people across the state. This conference that they held was actually brought members from across the state. There were people here from Long Island, Central New York, and all of Western New York. And at the conference, they adopted a resolution against biosolids. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. I brought a copy for you, and one for the members of the press here. Regarding the letter, Kathy, thank you for giving it to me, the letter that we referenced earlier tonight. What I found interesting about it is that Nathan's response was that they've been accepting grease and glycerin for over a year. And when we foiled the DEC and got the lab results of what they said was Class A, where they spread it in Royalton in the 18-Mile Creek watershed, which in my opinion will make it to Lake Ontario, they told the DEC that they hadn't added to the tank in over a year. And that's why the DEC allowed them to give samples that were over a year old. So the samples that they shared with the DEC were over a year old, not the actual sample, but the lab results from that. And now we have it in writing that they've been getting deliveries for over a year, not of sludge, but I really think that we need to push them based on what our experience has been from the beginning. They never mentioned a lagoon, yet looking through the DEC documents, they were talking lagoon or tank to the DEC, and they weren't talking to the towns about that. They slid that in. So I really wish that we could challenge them on this, because they're telling the DEC one thing and they're telling us something else. And they have a history of violations.
Have you by any chance given Matt the information from DEC? Is that available?
I can give you a copy of it. You gave me this letter last week, and between my own personal day job, I've just now had time to go through this.
We do have specialists who work on this,
Well, the other thing is that grease contains a lot of, they act like grease is clean. Grease is a problem too. That's where more parasites can, and proteins can be stored. So I really think we need to challenge them based on our history with them, and based on how they've behaved and the number of violations. And last week I was here at last meeting, I shared they had the same kind of thing. And I think that I also have a study where where the wastewater treatment plant treatment industry just gave a grant money to a University of Michigan to study if the time in a tank will automatically convert it to Class A. So that to me tells me they're not really sure if now all of a sudden the wastewater treatment industry is saying, oh, let's study this. So there's too many holes in the story as far as I'm concerned, and I really think that based on the experience we've had here in Wheatfield and how Quasars conducted themselves, we need to push them. I mean, we have the staff, we have Mr. Brooks, and then we have Steve Ricca and Matrix. So just to avoid an environmental catastrophe.
I know a while back you mentioned that they were dropping off from the drain doctor too. And I was by there, I don't know, a week or two ago, and I stopped because the drain doctor was pulling in right in front of me, and they just went back in. I stayed there for about 5 or 10 minutes, and they just backed up to the tank. So I don't know what the drain doctor is.
They're saying it's restaurant grease when people have called, but
Drain doctor does that?
yeah, they also do all the chemicals. There's a vacuum truck from Oxy, and where you used to work, is it DuPont or Dunlop? I screwed that up. They are the vacuum.
Do they do
truck for
septic
that.
tanks too?
Yes, they do. Yep. So this is self-regulating. They basically can tell us whatever. We can go, okay, because we think that they're, they just have a history of not being good citizens, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I think that, I don't have the leverage to push them. I only can share information with you. So I'd really appreciate it. Matt, I will get you the DEC document that we have, and I can also get you a link to the study that was just put out for I don't know which university in Michigan it was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If we do see contradictions, then we can question DEC on the contradictions.
Right, and this information and other information I've been discussing with our consultant, who can sort of do the academic research into it as opposed to the legal, and give us a basis that way.
Well, I will give you, when I saw this, I was like, oh my, because the DEC said nothing, they told us nothing's been added to the tank. So now they say it, and we have pictures. So,
Were we actually given a copy of the report that was supplied by the lab to the DEC? Do we have a copy of it?
I don't think so.
we have it. I can,
The actual lab report and the name of the lab? Maybe that wouldn't help Matt,
I know you've
to
sent
help
me
Matt, too.
something, but and we are also, I know there was questions before about the town foiling stuff, and we have sent some FOIL requests out over the past 3 weeks, requesting some of this information as well.
just got it. I mean, not just, but maybe like right before the last town board meeting, and it's like 75 pages, so it was too much to like try and go through it, but then when we pushed the DEC, they said, oh, well, they hadn't added to the tank, so.
Well, we are, on some of the requests you made before, I followed that up, did a FOIL with the state. The state's acknowledged they've received it. I'm still waiting for a response.
We can't let this company run roughshod over us. We can't. It's too important.
I just want to know if there's anything new on cobblestone, since I've seen 3 men out there today with hard hats and clipboards.
Nothing's come to my attention. Matt?
Nothing's come past me.
Okay.
Brian? Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on any subject? Anybody want to speak on any subject? If not, then we'll move along. For the record, Art Gerbeck is out of town on business, and the other 4 members are here. We do have 2 sets of minutes. We have minutes from the November 2nd meeting, and we also have minutes from a November 10th special board meeting. Does anybody wish to move either or both of these in for approval?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the November 2nd meeting.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second on the question.
Go ahead.
There's, on page 1, there's one correction, third motion from the bottom. The word all after or in front of Mary Beth should be allow.
Okay, you got that, Kath? Anything else on the question for the November 2nd meeting? If not, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? November 2nd is approved. We now have the meeting from November 10th. Does anybody wish to move that in for approval?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Randy.
Second.
Second by Larry. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Okay, so that's 3, 0, and 1, which is approved. So the November 10th meeting is approved. Okay, bill payment. Our bill payment for this meeting is $206,081.01. The voucher numbers are 2015-2212 through 2314. I need a motion to get the bills paid.
So moved.
Moved by Randy.
Second.
Need a second. Second by Gil. Any bills that anybody has a problem with? If not, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That's approved. Departments. Paul, what's going on with highway?
We've been through the town about 4 times in the week, pick up, I don't know if they haven't seen it, I don't know how they haven't seen it. Put leaves out, please don't cover with tarps, and please don't push the brush in with the leaves. We can't suck the leaves up when there's branches in it, it's causing tree down. Reminder, please keep the car off the road between 2 AM and 6 AM, and it also snows the weekend, and I don't want my guys to drive around vehicles or whatever in the middle of the night. We did get the pipe in on Kruger Road. They said we're gonna be back there, do a little more final grade, so we just wanna let it settle for a while, we wanna make sure we get some for the weather today.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple of trees that have to be knocked down and cleaned up and stuff. Okay, Paul, thank you. Anything for Paul? Thank you. Rich Donner, Water Sewer. Anybody have anything for Rich? No deer yet? Okay, then we'll move on to recreation, Mike Rinaldi. I had Nerf night Friday. You have another camp coming up, right? No, that's just last week, that's what it was, okay. Anything for Mike? Mike Clark, anything for Mike? One of the questions that seems to be very popular out there right now is zombie houses. Do you have a record again of the zombie houses? Are we able to do anything with them? Is that something we can actually do some good with?
Not much. For whatever reason, if they're less than 5 years foreclosed, they're pretty well protected. A lot of times you can't even find out who the mortgage holder is. Houses that have no mortgage on them, we have a little bit of advantage, but there's not many of those. Somebody still shows record in the title. It's difficult to do it. In fact, there's a lot of people in town that are looking to try it. They come to me, how can we buy them? You know, what's the process of steps? Until they get that far along, and they go to a broker, the house is kind of mess.
Yeah, well, it's things like mold. You worry about things like mold. When is that going to become a problem? Like if kids break into a house?
The only thing is that there's a couple of the outfits that decided that the house is staying vacant that long. They're stripping. They're taking the molding, or I'm sorry, not the molding, but they're taking the drywall out and the insulation, and getting right down to stuff. So that they can try to prevent, this stuff from happening. So I've seen that they come to us, let us know what they're doing. They're not taking permits per se, they're letting us know what they're doing as far as effective keeping the building.
What do they do, Mike, as far as heating these houses? They don't? Because I was on the Love
Hopefully
Canal,
they shut the water off.
the La Cara Association, the Love Canal Association, when they had that, when they shut down all those houses and moved people out in like 1978, they didn't start selling houses until 1990 or after, all the way up to maybe 2000 or after. But for those many years, they had heaters going in all those houses because they knew if they didn't heat them, that they would deteriorate real fast. So is there anything that we can do to force them to, because if they don't heat them, these things are gonna, they're gonna be destroyed inside.
Thanks to their weather ratings, the weather program, the AA freeze, the water system, but they turned the powers off most of the home. So there's no heat, no power. And there's nothing we can do about it as far as like from us, we can make them maintain as far as security part of it. The house is boarded up and closed, and then the exterior maintenance.
Yeah, I see that the house on Moyer Road was putting a roof out. Looks like it's finally getting a roof instead of these tarps.
Yeah, we went and condemned the building now because we got to the point where they were using the roof tarping as their protective coating. And it was ridiculous. It was every few months when it was blown off, the parts would come all over. So we decided to leverage a little bit more, and we've done that for another couple of buildings too. See, what's gonna happen is it's gonna force it to come to you guys to approve demolition costs.
Yeah.
Get into these structures that are way past. So you'll see that more as it comes. They're not gonna get fixed, they're gonna get torn down.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
One question, Mike. Are you pursuing estimates on the community center for the ventilation?
Yes.
Any update on that?
We have one in-house, or one bid back. We have another contractor bidding up Wednesday. And we should hope to have all three, at least three bids by the end of the week. Before the holidays, I say. So we're trying to get, so we can move forward on that.
Thank you.
How about the brick on the town hall building here? We had talked about getting I know there's a lot of places here on our building that need pointing. Did you ever get
Well, besides repointing it, some of the energy problems we have, which includes the windows. So as far as some of that maintenance, I think that might have to wait till spring.
you walk around the town hall here, you can see right into the bricks in spots.
I got areas that, what about the back entrance into the building department?
It's gonna make it worse, just gonna pop it apart worse.
It's, you're right, it's hanging, so we have that to deal with. I have all this stuff. Where is it?
Do you have estimates with the list?
No. Again, we started this whole process with the windows and furnaces, air conditioning, building up a heat well, and we want to start off top with the windows, work ourselves down to basics. We do a couple of things. This building's 1907. It's great. It's got great bones, but it needs a few weeks more.
Can't let it fall apart, though.
I don't want to.
Have you talked to Bernie about getting any NYSERDA grants? Because we did an energy grant for lighting. I don't know whether windows would count for that.
One of the first things I did when I started here was talk about what can we do. We go, I might be able to help with a furnace, so people have the windows don't fall into it, some of the other energy stuff. So we just ended up with, I guess, the roof run, for solid at the time. So we actually had Mr. Roger Sigmund was in looking at some of the units that we're using right now. So we're looking at other alternatives as far as trying to best upgrade our heat system along with the air conditioning. I would have asked Kathy, what the differences in the temperature upstairs versus what summer versus winter and what we do downstairs is ridiculous. There's a list of things.
Thank you, Mike. Bridget? Anybody have anything for Assessor? If not, then Arlene, how are our seniors doing? Very good. Nice. Next, we're up with Wendell, Tim, or Leanne.
Thank you. First item on our agenda this evening is our planning board summary. And the first meeting that we had was October 21st. And the first agenda item on that meeting was the site plan for Driftwood Suites. And a lot of these we've talked about before. They kind of go on to multiple planning board meetings, so bear with me if I'm repeating some things you've heard before. But this project, the applicant proposes to expand their development at 2760 Niagara Falls Boulevard. They're proposing to construct 4 additional 3-bedroom units at the site. 3 of them are grouped together up in the front on the Niagara Falls Boulevard side, while the 4th is constructed onto the end of the existing 5-unit structure. The planning board discussed several items that remain unresolved with the proposed project, and no action was taken at that meeting. The next item was a site plan for the Bridgestone foam manufacturing facility. That's the facility that's proposed in the Vantage International Point Industrial Park. It's on the Indicon Drive east side. The facility will manufacture polyurethane foam seat pads for automobiles and will generate 60-plus jobs initially and an additional 30-plus jobs at full build-out. Seeker was completed at the October 7th meeting, but at this meeting the planning board approved the site plan with noted conditions of the planning board and noted conditions of Wendell's approval recommendation letter dated October 21st, 2015. The next item was a sketch plan for what's called Niagara International Sports and Entertainment. The applicant proposes a 2-phase project for the eastern side of the Summit Mall. Phase 1 would actually construct a 138,600 square foot domed sports field complex. Phase 2 would construct an additional 80,000 square foot enclosed hockey rink with 2 adjacent auxiliary rinks. The development would generate 12 full-time jobs and 30 to 40 part-time positions at full build-out. The applicant was advised of several items to review prior to their next submittal, including applying to ZBA for a variance for the proposed 110-foot height of the structure. No action was required or taken. The last item for the 21st agenda is a sketch plan for what's being called Aldi's of Wheatfield. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing entertainment complex at 3939 Niagara Falls Boulevard, that's the Adventure Speedway, and construct a 17,825 square foot Aldi store and a 4,086 square foot future retail building. The project would provide a mix of full-time and part-time jobs for 12 to 15 people, The applicant was advised of several items to review prior to their next submittal, including review of the Niagara Falls Boulevard Overlay District requirements and a request to provide more robust landscaping. The applicant was also advised that a traffic study would be required for this project. A public informational meeting was scheduled for the November 18th Planning Board meeting at 7:05 p.m. No other action was taken. The second meeting was the October 4th meeting, and the first item on that agenda was a special use permit for Kendall. The applicant requests renewal of a temporary special use permit to stable 2 horses at 2569 Worrell Street. The Planning Board held a public hearing and subsequently renewed the special use permit for 2 years. That would expire on October 5th, 2017. The next item on the agenda was a commercial vehicle parking permit for Retzlaff. The applicant proposes the renewal of a commercial vehicle parking permit for up to 3 commercial vehicles at 2626 Lockport Road. The Planning Board renewed the commercial vehicle parking permit for 2 years, which will expire on September 15th, 2017, with noted conditions. Excuse me. The next item was a site plan for what's being called the DePaul Assisted Living and Memory Care. The applicant proposes to construct a 59,000 square foot single-story building to house an 80-bed assisted living facility coupled with a 34-bed memory care facility on Forest Parkway in the Woodlands Corporate Center expansion. The applicant was advised of several items to review prior to their next submittal, including the need for front setback variance, their proximity to conservation areas, floodplains, and wetlands. No action was taken. The last item on that agenda was a site plan for the Gateway Center of Western New York. We've talked about this one before as well. The applicant proposes to construct a 50,000 square foot pre-engineered metal building on Indicon Drive West. The building would be used as a warehouse for medical supplies, specifically for first aid kits, and would bring approximately 15 jobs. A negative declaration under seeker was issued, and the Planning Board subsequently approved the site plan with noted conditions and contingent upon engineering review. And that was our summary for the last 2 Planning Board meetings. Are there any questions?
I have one question. We keep adding jobs and businesses in Indicon. At what point do we look at putting a traffic light there on Lockport Road so that these people that are all these jobs that are supposedly coming there, is that a possibility? Do we go to the county, or would we ever approach that?
Well, I would think if it gets to the point where everything is built out and fully developed, if there's issues going there, then that would be a good time to investigate it. A lot of the facilities that are going in there are bringing a lot fewer jobs than you would think of a bigger building. It may be a big warehouse, but it still may be a smaller amount of jobs. So I
just heard about 80 jobs, I guess, is why I'm...
Well, I think it's a lot more than that.
For the Bridgestone one, there's quite a few employees at that one. The warehouse one was, I think, 15 employees. So
To begin with, but they do expect a lot more.
Well, as they continue development, so there's definitely more area on the west side of the industrial park that they actually own that they could subsequently develop. I believe there's a small area at the southern end of the industrial park too that's still open, but it's getting near complete.
Well, they claim, the IDA claims that they're sold out, that they have no more room. They are dedicating some land, a small piece of land, over to the church. What's it called? I think it's called the Church of God there, right at the front of their property. But they claim that they're sold out. There is no more land at Indicon. Pizza Logs, or whatever, I think they call themselves, Finger Foods on the application, still hasn't started building. Gateway still hasn't started building, but Bridgestone's doing their groundwork now. They've cleared the land, and that's huge.
Right, I guess I should rephrase that and say that there are only a few left that don't have approved site plans. That'd be a better... They couldn't be sold. There's just nothing that's been in front of the planning board for them yet.
Yeah, National Grid cleared a whole big piece of land. They're using that only for, National Fuel, the pipeline. They're using it for a staging area for the pipeline. They claim they're not going to build there. That's where they originally wanted to put the dryer, the dehydration, right at the end of the runway. 1,000 feet off the end of the runway. Just didn't seem to be the right place. Anything else, Tim?
Nothing on the planning board summary. We did have another agenda item but we have been informed since then, putting that on our agenda, that we can't, the board can't act on that tonight. So I don't know if you'd rather talk about it now, or if we want to wait until we have a subsequent meeting to talk about it.
I think you can talk about it. You can bring up what the nature of the problem is. Well, it's better that you tell.
Sure.
Say it.
Well, we've been working on the multi-use trail that's along River Road, and through the initial parts of the design work that our office has been doing, it's included conversations with the railroad CSXT. And basically, our initial direction for this trail was to keep it south of the railroad tracks and not have to work with crossing those railroad lines. And basically now it appears that our only alternative is to actually cross the railroad tracks. And in doing that, we have to cross them twice. So one of those crossings has to be a bridge, which is the only way CSXD will allow us to cross away from a main road. The other crossing is at Whitmer Road that already is an at-grade crossing, but it's one that they'll require improvements for a multi-use trail there. So we had in our packet a supplement for the extra design work that's going to be required to do that we were putting in front of the board. However, because the bond that's currently in place does not cover that, the board cannot authorize that at this time. So we're looking at changing that bond amount and answering other questions that have come
In
up.
order to approve the additional monies required for design of the entire project, we would have to redo our bond resolution, modify our bond resolution. We didn't get this until this project came out till Thursday, I guess. We got first notification. We've not had time enough to get our bond counsel to take a look at it. So hopefully we'll be able to take action at the next meeting.
And Wendell's going to have to look at the North Tonawanda part of it,
Right.
which we were originally in our design, but it's in North Tonawanda.
Right, we have to make sure the logistics of that still work, definitely.
I have a question. How do the people from Wheatfield get down to this road so they can get on this trail if there's no sidewalk or no extended shoulders?
Okay, the plan for the trail would be starting at the 102nd Street area, which is the town line, going along the river side, right along River Road, back set off of River Road, but on the right-of-way, and come down to about Williams Road. There is a crossing at Williams Road now that would have to be upgraded, and then it goes back along Williams Road, and then you turn in behind what's Sandy's Restaurant, and then the trail would follow along through the woods, in behind all the houses.
Are you going to provide a trail from Jagow so those people can get onto Williams Road?
That would be a future development that's not included in this package.
See, you're making all these things for us, and you were sitting at my kitchen table saying to me how the Wheatfield residents will probably not get much use out of it.
That's right.
Remember?
That's why we need to get money from elsewhere.
Said that you didn't know if you wanted to stick us with these up-to taxes. But so you're making this beautiful, and you even said, how are we gonna get there? I mean, if you put a sidewalk on Silver, you could go to Ward could go to River Road. If you put a sidewalk on Jagow, all those Cedar Streets could come out and go to Williams Road. But it just doesn't make sense. And you don't even have money to point a building, and you're doing this stuff? I don't understand.
The Greenway Trail goes now from South Buffalo, all the way up through Buffalo, all the way up through Tonawanda, all the way. The one area that hasn't done their homework, has not completed anything, is Wheatfield. And part of the problem is that we didn't have the money to do it. We were given a grant to get started. And we've also now been given some money from the Greenway Trail, from the counties as a host community, which will help also. But the people of Wheatfield shouldn't be paying for this whole project. It's not a project for Wheatfield, it's a project for all of Western New York. It's an important project for all of Western New York, but all of Western New York can't do this, we have to do it.
So shouldn't we be connecting our people so they can use it?
That's obviously a question, that's obviously an interesting question, but we have to deal with the trail itself. And there was discussion about adding trails coming up through Mario Park, for example. which would take it to Jago Road. But at this point in time, our concern has been, I mean, Larry's been working on this project probably for 10 years. We owe it to Western New York to do our part, but we don't owe it to Western New York to build this whole thing on the backs of Wheatfield. Without grant money, we're not going to be able to do it. That's correct. But it does cover, it's an 80-20 grant up to a certain point, and that's why we need help from either the Greenway Commission. Right now we have $70,000 from them, it helps. We asked for $600,000. So we do not, there's a phase 1 and a phase 2, Deb. We're really talking about phase 1, which gets us to Liberty Drive, because phase 2 is crazy expensive, and without additional money, we're not going to be able to build it. But we can design it. It's not that expensive to design it, and that's where we are. There are some people that use it quite a bit in some areas, and there's probably areas that they don't. But that's, Chet, you're exactly right, and that's why it can't be Wheatfield's problem. Wheatfield has to do the work. We have to be willing to do the homework, but we can't afford to put the cost of the Greenway Trail on the backs of our local people. The crossing, the second crossing of the railroad is going to be happening in the city of North Tonawanda. Does that belong on the backs of Wheatfield? Probably not. So those are the things, that's part of the design process, is to find out how much those things are going to cost, where they're going to be, and then go out and get more money to help us build it.
We're going to have to strip out the cost at North Tonawanda, because we're taking it to 102nd Street, which is actually the Niagara Falls city limit. But I think the project should end at the Wheatfield line, and that extra 1,500 feet or whatever it is to get to Whitmer Road, and the Whitmer Road crossing, which I think CSX is saying is $300,000+ for it, that should be a cost that North Tonawanda has to bear, not Town Wheatfield.
Yeah,
we do need to get some additional grant money.
Yeah. Yeah, the alternative is to have them on riding bikes on River Road. There's no room to be able to put a 10-foot wide path on River Road on either side gracefully, unless you're crossing back and forth across the road. And the residents have basically told us, have told Larry for 10 years, have told me for 6 years, that we don't want it on our property. So the only alternative is to go back behind the houses through the woods. There are other places that are wooded along the trail, especially going north, not so much going south. But there are no alternatives. The only alternative is to not have it. Yes, Julie?
That would be the additional design fee, yes.
That's correct.
So what happens if, so then, just for round number, 350 plus another 175, we're up over like $500,000 of design work, and then we can't afford to build it? You know, what, and 350 bonding, that's like a credit card bill, it's not a grant. So what are we gonna do? We have over $500,000 and then we can't even build it.
Well, the grant is for $1,136,000 at an 80-20 rate. So we would be subject to 20% of that, which is why we asked the county for additional monies. They don't have enough money to give us what we need, certainly not in a single year. They only have some $350,000 approximately that they give to all of the different Greenway projects throughout the county. So they found $70,000 to give to us this year. It's the first time we've ever gotten a dime of Greenway Trail money. so far. That's why we're looking primarily at Phase 1, which is to get to Liberty Drive. We have a bond resolution, and we have a bond available to be able to approve. We have not approved the bond yet. So, yeah, we have not taken any of that money yet.
How much did we spend in the, development so far on it then? How much did Window use already to develop what we got to now of the trail?
We've had a few bills. I don't know how much.
Yeah, again, I
would
don't
hesitate.
remember exact, I think we've spent around 12,000 or so far.
And that got us to Liberty Drive so far on this design?
No.
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 Did you lay it out, or is it laid over then, on how much design is already into it, or what it
It's-
takes to get us to there?
It's had preliminary layouts done, in addition to this. What the initial part has been working on negotiations with CSX. It's been working on contract with, our wetland specialist that has to go out there very soon, hopefully within the next couple weeks before the weather starts getting poor. It covers starting of survey. We have to go and survey the whole corridor. Leanne, I'm not sure what else we've got so far. Did you hear that?
At the end of your report, we talked before about the map plan and report for the Kruger Road project. Originally, the number we had been given, I know it was a rough estimate, it was not in writing, but the rough estimate was $500,000 anticipated, or $85 to $100 per linear foot.
Right.
This one's $945,000, which comes to something like $180 per linear foot. As Debbie asked, why?
Right. Well, our first initial guesstimate that we came up at around $100 a foot for, and it's a mile, so it's a little over it's 5280 actually. That was based on rates we've had doing similar jobs to that in Lockport over the past year or two. And those both were pretty much in line with that rate. The main difference is that those jobs that we were using from a linear footage standpoint had pretty minimal drainage work associated with them. They were in areas that either the sidewalks weren't going to interfere with drainage or they had fairly new drainage put in. And when we did our first draft of our estimate, that included, I think, just a couple 100 foot of storm pipe, basically the only pieces that weren't storm piped on that side of Kruger Road, our number was at around the $600,000 mark. And that included contingencies, mobilization, and the engineering, legal, and administrative costs. What happened after that is, after discussions with the highway superintendent, we took a closer look at the drainage systems that we have out there that this sidewalk will go on top of, and found that it's been a kind of a piecemeal system. The original system, the original road that was there looks like it was basically all roadside ditches, and then everybody had a culvert underneath their driveway that went in. And over time, more houses get built, more culverts get put in. Various people want their front yards filled in because they don't want a ditch there, they want a yard. So things have just happened piecemealed over the past 40, 50 years even. So,
I could say something. I mean, part of that increase was because we need to talk. I told you we replaced 3 driveway pipes on that side of the road already this year that were rotted out. And I could not keep spending $600,000 on sidewalk and have the rest of the pipes slowly rot out. And as it rots out, even if the sidewalk is on the pipe, we have to dig next to it and it's saying, man, you know that's gonna happen. And I told you, might as well figure on redoing the drains on that side of the road for that very reason. It makes no sense for brand new sidewalks on old pipes.
which made sense because also, as you know, in Wheatfield, our slopes are flat, so usually our drainage pipes are pretty flat and don't have a lot of cover. So that, it lends a lot of support to not really wanting to be compacting a sub-base stone and pouring a concrete sidewalk if you're only within, 6 or 8 inches of a corrugated metal pipe that's been in the ground for 40 years. We're dealing with other places in the town that we're replacing those pipes that are, newer. They like to rot up from the bottom. So basically, by including storm pipe for that whole length and the structures that are on there as being replaced, that's really the main difference in that driving cost. If you look at our estimate, I think we had just over $200,000 just in the pipe. It's a mile of storm pipe. And then the structures were around the $80,000 mark. So adding those all onto the project is what brought that up. Now, as we get into a detailed design on this, and again, this wasn't based on survey or anything, it was based on us driving up and down and taking some measurements on what lengths, counting structures, and counting how many driveways have to be crossed. Our hopes are we get out there, there may be structures that were put in very close to each other that really don't need to go back in there, so we can likely save some money. We don't have to replace everything that's there in verbatim, and some of those structures could be replaced with a fixed inlet. So the price will likely be cheaper when it comes to it, but when you're dealing with the map plan and report to get your bond, you really need to go for a number that you're not going to go over for the bond. Otherwise, if you get less than that and we find out we need more, we're in a pickle.
Okay, what Tim means by that is the whole purpose of going through this exercise was to find out how much it would actually cost and delineate those costs so that our grants writer could go after a grant. He feels that there's a fair chance for us to get a grant for the sidewalk one time. So we still, I assume we still intend to apply for that grant and see what comes back. And if it becomes inexpensive enough to be able to do, then we can proceed from there. If not, then we have some discussion to do. So unless somebody objects, I plan on giving this map over to Bernie. I think he probably already has a draft copy, right?
I haven't given it to him yet, but
okay.
That's
And let Bernie see what he can do for grants.
So you will have that to him, if you needed it, you try to sell it.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that takes care of the map plan. So there's nothing we can act upon on Wendell this evening.
Any other questions?
Then we'll move on to regular motions. Matt? The very first one we have to put on hold.
That's correct. So we'll move on to the next one. It's from the Highway Department to authorize the Highway Department to purchase a 30-inch flail mower off of the New York State contract number PC65421 for the cost of $6,185.40 from the 2015 Highway Department budget. Said mowers to be used when attached to the Highway Department's mini excavator for clearing brush work prior to doing drainage work.
Okay, we have a request from Highway. Does somebody wish to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. I guess my question, Paul, is what is a flail mower?
It's almost like a brush hog, where they go in, clean out some of the minor brush before we get in there and start digging the ditch, we clean it up nice. Instead of guys going in with chainsaws, chainsaw use when you're into that small stick, it's very dangerous. We come in there first, we clear out a 10-foot wide path, then we come back in the machine and dig it out. So it makes the job.
Is that something we'd be able to use to knock down ditches, to knock down the cattails and whatever in ditches?
Certain places, yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. If nothing further, then all in favor of approving the purchase signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's approved.
Okay, next motion is refer request from Rizal Homes regarding installation of streetlights at the corner of Forest Glen and Brandywine and in the cul-de-sac of Forest Glen to Town Highway Department and Town Engineers for review and report of the feasibility and necessity of said request.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I got a question. Do we know what cost on this? And we're paying for this, and who's paying for the lighting once they're up?
We are paying for it. The way these generally have worked in the past, they're standalone lights because there's no telephone poles to work off of. So they're approximately $250 per year each. And they become part of our general lighting budget, which Ed is somewhere around $110,000 a year, give or take, for the town-wide. So anything that's on our own streets becomes as well as here in the building, becomes part of the general town lighting cost.
How much to install the lights? Any idea? I guess my question is going back to the planning board with a potential signal light needed on Lockport Road. Now a subdivision that's approved, and now I didn't do nothing wrong, now I gotta pay for a traffic light, or a street light. I mean, shouldn't some of this be caught at the planning board stage?
It's not in our rules. That's something, as Gil was saying before, it's something we can consider going forward, but it's not in our rules at this point. Planning board follows our rules, so it's up to us if we want to change that.
Well, in addition to the, in addition to the streetlights, we have signage. You have stop signs and
Right.
other signage that you possibly need on those streets, so, you know, whether you want to pass those costs off to...
Yeah, those are all things that we can talk about at this point. That's not really before us.
I mean, prior to accepting a dedication, it's reviewed by the engineer and make sure it's appropriately constructed and all the infrastructure's there. I guess it's a question of if in the future demanding additional infrastructure, whether it be signs or requiring lightings as part of what's being accepted, I suppose, or the other consideration is establishing a lighting district if enough lights are going to be necessary for a particular subdivision, and have the residents there pay for it.
Who's gonna get bids on this, or?
It's not bids. You get it from National Grid.
From National, so do we have a cost? I started out asking a cost. We don't, can somebody?
You don't know the cost until we actually ask them. They have to send out a team that they charge us based upon the distance from the pole to where they get their energy from. It actually modifies the distance. So until it's approved and I tell them to go ahead, I don't even know what the cost is going to be. We have some control over where the lights go. We try to put them on a space in between two properties where we can.
Well, and that's part of the way I prepared this motion is refer a request to either engineers or highway to look into it, and this is not maybe necessarily a motion to establish that those lights are going to be installed. This is to figure out that information and try to determine what the cost may be so you can then make a decision.
I guess my point would be we've installed it on every single other housing development in town. Why would we stop here? You know, they built it based upon the rules that were in place at the time. Why, if you're going to change, by all means, let's talk about it, let's change. But it was built according to the rules in place at the time it was approved. We have to put these lights in.
So is this coming, Matt, you implied that this may be coming back for a second approval?
Well, that's the way I prepared the motion in this case, because it was just a request, and that's the way I prepared it. I didn't look at the way previous town attorney had done it, but I prepared it in the sense that to figure out what the cost would be, so then the board could make a determination. Of course, if you want to amend it to approve it now, that's another thing, but that's the way I prepared it. That's sort of the way the language is now, to refer it to get that information, and then you can come back and decide if that's in fact going to be approved, having the information.
I could probably get National Grid to commit a price. I'd have to talk to the developer and find out where he wants them, and then we can probably get National Grid to give us a better price if that's what the members want. An actual price. Okay. So I guess I'll go back. Do we have a motion to put these two lights in place? Okay, so we'll hold off on that. I'll see what I can do to get a price for that. Matt?
Okay, next motion's from the Recreation Department to approve a request of the Recreation Department to hire Maria Burgi for a position at the Youth Center pursuant to the hours, pays, and other requirements of job specifications. Said approval or hire would be contingent upon final review and interview by the town's Human Resources Personnel Director.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gil, second by Larry. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved.
Next motion, again from the Recreation Department, to authorize the removal of the Recreation Department's 1994 trailer from service due to poor condition and authorize it to be sold either via sealed bid or auctioned off in order for the Recreation Department to replace said trailer with a new trailer.
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
I'll second.
Second by Randy. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved.
Next motion, again from the Recreation Department, to authorize, now that the prior motion's been passed, the Recreation Department to purchase a new trailer from PJ NFP Auto for the price of $3,495 to replace the removed from service 1994 trailer. Said purchase is a reasonable response from 3 quotes obtained, and it's to be charged to the Recreation Department's 2015 budget.
Do we have
So
a
moved.
Moved by Gil. Do we have a second?
I will second. It looks like I looked at the bids today, you get more trailer for less money as far as I see, so, and you're happy with it? Okay.
Now, you said this is a huskier trailer than the one we're getting rid of, so it's capable of handling your Bobcat. If nothing further, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved.
Next motion from the town attorney to refer to the town grant writer map plan and report for the sidewalks on Kruger Road and authorize a town grant writer to research the availability of grants for said possible project and begin the application process for any applicable grants for said potential project.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Second by Randy. Anything on the question? It doesn't cost anything extra for us to apply for grants. At the very, very least, we would know where we stand. Takes a while to get an answer, though. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That's approved.
Next motion comes from the Firearms Permit Review Board. It's a motion to approve firearm discharge permits and our renewals for the individuals as shown on the attached list that was in the package.
Yeah, there were 4 names on the list. I don't have it.
You want me to read the names, or?
I got 'em.
I do. Those names would be for renewals, Thomas Irving and Ron Wolf Jr., new applicants Michael Hawkins.
Okay, do we have a motion? Moved by Larry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Gil.
On the question,
Go ahead.
one of these applicants, it has after his name, with written permission from a resident in the town to hunt on his property. Does this mean he can only hunt on that property?
I would think not. I would think a firearms permit is a firearms permit to use anywhere where they have firearms, right?
It's,
Where they're allowed?
there's a quotation, with written permission.
He seems to have the answer.
I'm sorry. Really?
Okay.
Is this permit, this is strictly the muzzleloader? Anything else, Gil?
That's it.
Okay. All in favor of approving the permit request?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Matt, one more, 2 more.
2 more, yes. This is from the town clerk. It's a motion to revise the November 2nd, 2015 bill payment as follows. Increase general fund payments by $707 $2,000.21 for voucher number 2015-2206 and 2015-2207 for payment of National Grid bills. The revised total bill payment, $184,665.26.
Okay, need a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Second by Randy. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's approved.
And finally, a late added motion to approve. It's from the Budget Director and the Highway Department to approve and authorize the town supervisor to sign the installment purchase contract for the purchase of two 2016 Mack GU 713 trucks with Everest stainless steel dump bodies, hydraulics, and plow, subject to the delivery of the two trucks to the Highway Department. This purchase was previously authorized by the town board. The installment purchase contract has now been received and reviewed by the Budget Director and Town Attorney. It's been approved. Said approval of the contract would be subject to the delivery of the two trucks in the Highway Department, and the delivery date would alter the payment schedule based on the date of delivery.
Okay, need a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Larry. Anything on the question? This is simply going along with that which was already approved when he ordered the truck, correct?
That's correct. The contractor installment agreement arrived. It's been reviewed, and that's to authorize the execution based on the when it arrives, when we know when the payment schedule begins.
Yeah, the reason we're doing an installment contract is our budget director took a look at the cost of doing installment versus bonding, and because of the actual cost of going through the process of bonding, this becomes cheaper than bonding would have. There is a little bit of interest involved, but you don't have any bonding lawyer cost, legal costs. Anything further on the question? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That's approved.
I have no further motions.
Bob, could we revisit that one with the lights, and maybe just modify that motion? Seeing that Matt was going to do a two-step on this, two-step process to get the estimate and then approve it. And I think Supervisor Cliff, you mentioned you were going to get estimates anyways. Why don't we just put on there, tail end, that we were going to get estimates for town board approval?
Yeah, generally, we have in the past approved putting lights in place.
I know.
And then you get the price after the fact, because it costs National Grid money to be able to go out and come up with the distance they need for which they charge us. If we want to attempt to get the price first, I can attempt to get the price first. Matt's request is just to essentially go out and get the information.
Which is essentially getting us the price so that we can approve it the following meeting anyways.
Exactly.
That's the way I structured it. Perhaps in the past, Mr. O'Toole did it a little differently, but based on the way I read the request, I wanted to get a cost first. But if the town has more, familiarity with having done it in the past, and you can go ahead.
I don't think there's any overwhelming rush, because it's not going to happen this year anyway, probably. It won't happen until spring. I think if we want to take the time to get the price first, I'll see if I can get that price first.
Okay.
And if they're not willing to give us a price until we approve it, then we have something to talk about. Okay, we'll move on to board members' items. Councilman Hellwig, do you have anything?
Just at the last meeting, a gentleman was asking about the LWRP grant. He wanted to know the amount, and I checked with Wendell, and it seems like the amount was $39,500 grant that we received for the LWRP. So I just wanted to make that announcement. He's not here tonight, but anyone in the audience that was hearing that question, they got the answer now. That's all I have.
Okay. Councilman Doucette.
I have a correspondence from Adams Fire Company. they'd like to add Alexander Marshank to their active membership, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's approved, Gil. Anything else?
That's it.
Randy?
I have a couple things. I'm thinking in 2016, any new hires, I don't know from the department heads, what are the thoughts about, we do drug and alcohol testing, about a background physical examination from occupational health? I don't know, I know we do not do this at this time. My thought is it would be nice to have a baseline on new hires as far as the condition that they are in. Another thing I have is, I would also in 2016, I don't want to make it too corporate, but have we ever considered a performance review of our employees by our supervisors?
The first question, they do get a physical medical when they're full-time employees, do they? Regular? Yeah. They do get physical.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what Randy's talking about is a more serious physical where you actually go through back strength analysis and those kinds of things. I don't know that we've done that in the past. It's something to take a look at. The other point was,
Performance review of our employees?
okay, I don't think our department heads do performance reviews, correct?
I'm going to this year. It's in the personnel handbook.
That's what I have this for.
And you might have been formal one-on-one with employees, but
Is there anything submitted to the town or kept on file?
if there was a problem during the course of the year, I feel, yeah, there will be, but the one-on-one, and those are high points and those are low points, and those do a little improvement.
And my third thing was, I know, Rich, I looked at some of the invoices, $13.50 for number one stone. Do we ever consider, or do we get prices from County Line or Buffalo Crush, a delivered price to our yard? I know convenience plays into it when you run out to Lockport and get the stone. But to have a stockpile in our yard, do we get prices from County Line and or Buffalo Crush?
What we're under right now is the county bid pricing for the stone. So that's us doing the trucking.
But is there ever, can we compare County Line or?
Well, county line does, they're in the bid book. For certain things they are, county line does have prices in the bid book.
I'm just saying, I think I paid $13.50 for number one stone. I get 200 ton a year. It just seems like that's a high price for us. That's all I'm,
We use one of the county's contracts.
yeah.
I mean, I know what you're talking about, county line sometimes does keep their prices, but when it comes to like $1 a ton, that's $20.
No, I understand, but if you can get a trailer with 36 ton
Right.
to your stockpile, it could make a difference. Trying to keep them honest, that's all.
Right, well, I know.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to make a motion that we advertise for appointments for next year. We're at the point where we'll be looking for filling several appointment positions. It's not automatic that people are reappointed, and there may be some openings here or there. So I'd like to move that we have Kathy send out the advertisement for appointed positions.
Second.
Second by Gil. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Kath.
Did you have a deadline on when you wanted those applications in by?
Do you have a deadline? Usually it's somewhere around the 15th, 16th.
Usually the third week of December.
Okay, if we could add that, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it, but if we can add that to the motion, that'd be good.
That's my motion. I'll go ahead and change the motion to say December 15th. Gil?
I accept it.
Okay. Then we're good. Last meeting, or the meeting before, it might have been the meeting before, John Cunningham was in and brought up several questions having to do with the gas dehydration unit, which is being proposed for Liberty Drive here in Wheatfield. National Grid's not been overflowing with information about that. They've not been willing to hold a meeting here in Wheatfield. They haven't even brought it up at the meetings that they've had in Wendellville. So I attended the meeting, that last meeting that was in Wendellville, and I talked to two of the people there, Ron Kramer, who's president of Empire Pipeline, and also Ron Kasperzak, who was the lead engineer for these projects, and asked him a bunch of questions. I'm going to have that information, if it's not already up there, I'll have this question and answer up on the website as fast as we can get it up there. It's not every question that needs to be asked. There's a long way to go. I suspect that when they come to us, they're going to be coming to the planning board to put up the dehydration unit. They'll need a site plan. The planning board has the authority to ask for a public information meeting or even a public hearing if it's called for. So there will be a lot more coming down the road, but I do have some of the questions that John had asked and one or two of my own, and I have their answers. These are not my answers. These are the answers that they gave to me, and that'll be up on the website shortly. And that's what I have. Our next meeting is December 7th, 7:30 p.m. As far as I know, we don't have any preliminary, so it would be at 7:30. So the next step would be back to public input. Does anybody have, yes, Laurie?
John Cunningham couldn't be here tonight, and he gave me a couple questions to ask you, so I think you just answered a couple of them. One of the questions is that he's asking that, like CSX, needing an account to deal with the town, why shouldn't the gas company set up an account with Wheatfield, and Wheatfield send a bill for the time that the town people spend on their projects? For example, the town attorney, building inspector, etc. They don't pay taxes, so why should they be using the town's assets for free? That was one of his questions.
They do pay taxes. They pay a great deal. They're one of our large taxpayers.
Okay.
And this project, because we don't tax, Town of Wheatfield doesn't have a general tax, Town of Wheatfield doesn't have a highway tax, so they don't pay those. They do pay for county version of the same thing. The biggest tax that they would end up paying is going to be school tax. That's actually one of the questions I answered, that they answered, and I've got on here, is that the National Grid, National Fuel pipelines don't give very many children into the school district, but they do help pay for the taxes.
Okay. All right, and then he wanted to know about denationalization of property within a 10-mile radius.
I know nothing about that. That certainly hasn't come up.
And did they discuss anything about the hazards of living downwind from the...
Discussed at the dryer, yes, that was one of the questions, and they explained how it is that they do have material going off. They also talked about that as far as the compressor goes at some length, and they had several different stations. You can go ask people how that's going to work. They are doing an awful lot, they claim, to mitigate problems and anything going off into the air. They're supposedly building these buildings so that sound won't get out, and these are allegedly vibration-proof motors. So they're claiming that you won't hear them off-site and you won't feel any vibration off-site. And they intend to have any, except for emergencies which might occur on the regular use of that building and on the regular use of the gas dehydration unit. National Fuel is saying that they will not be giving off-site fumes. I know that the one young lady who did the talk, I've seen her talk. I was not there, but I did see it. I got a CD with that now. She talked that there could be carry as much as 10 miles on the wind of effluent. National Grid is saying that they're collecting the problem, things going off in the air. They're collecting it, scrubbing it, and they're going to try to mitigate problems from that. It'll be built allegedly very similar to the one down in Wales Center, I believe it is. So if anybody wants to actually see one, you can go down to Wales Center and see a compressor. And you can make up your own mind as to whether it's noisy or whether it's giving anything off. I thought it was pretty interesting on the talk where she showed a compressor, a typical compressor, when you look at it with visible sight, you don't see anything going off. But when you look at it with a ultraviolet or infrared, whichever it was, all of a sudden you see this gas going off the same thing that you can't see. There is no, there's no color.
I know that they've
To what they
had,
give us.
I don't know, what are they, infrared pictures? Infrared pictures where they
It was,
show
it's
the...
pretty scary. When you look at that, it's pretty scary. Now, they claim they're going to be collecting all that and scrubbing it before it goes out.
And, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure that'll get a good, thorough review when it comes to planning board. Julie?
I just have one question, well, actually two questions. Regarding the driftwood, I'd like to know, number one, you talked about placement of another townhouse, close to the, or near the roadside, and then two more in the back. How close to the road, and are we going to keep in mind that in our dreamland, we want that boulevard fixed? Or, you know, the state is going to come through at some point? And we talk about the base all the time, and keeping it clear. We need to be proactive about the boulevard, not to impede any improvements coming there. So I wanted to ask how close it will be and how we will, how that will be approved. And then the second thing is zoning different for apartment buildings versus a hotel?
Bridget?
Requirements different. Zoning and building. I don't see zoning.
Well, there's, under commercial code, there's residential 1, 2, 3, there's transit housing, there's hotels, motels. So the simple answer, yes.
So it just becomes residence.
It's not, it can't, by zone for a residential single family.
Well, there's a little hotel down about 15-minute apothecary on the boulevard that's basically, housing people. They're long-term residents. So those are virtually become apartments.
Technically, anything in a C1 and under the residential code, commercial code, they are short-term residents, R1, R2. Technically.
And what about the boulevard, the placement of, if that is approved, where it will be, will it be everything?
I can add to that. They are meeting the 65-foot setback that's required along state and county roads, and they've also checked with, and I believe they provided documentation to the planning board that any future plans for the boulevard, how far out and gone they were, at least the last round of plans that were done in that area, do not come any closer to the south side. If anything, they push a little bit to the north. So they've checked with the DOT to make sure that they're not losing any land on that site in the future should the boulevard expand.
So it's just meeting the 65 foot.
Correct.
I think we listen to that one.
Well, that would be a question for planning board. And again, planning board will make them follow the rules of the town, the rules of the state, the rules of the county. That's their job. That's what they do.
They could also be good neighbors and think ahead and say, you know what, we want to show you that, we want to be here, and we're going to take that further just so that there isn't any interference with the boulevard when something happens.
If, yeah.
Well, sooner or later it's going to happen.
Yeah, you said two things.
I'm sorry.
You said you had two questions.
No, he already answered the one about the zoning.
Okay. Anybody else? Sharon?
The planning board meeting, will it be in the usual room, or?
That's up to Walt. Walt's in charge. Walt's not here, but he's holding a public information meeting or hearing. Public information meeting. He's probably counting on a few people, so they have this room available. I've told them if they need it, we can have meetings at the community center. It's his decision.
Come in, look,
If,
there,
yep. Now that'll start right around 7 o'clock, 7:05. The first thing is going to be all these. The primary reason for holding the hearing has to do with all these. Okay. Chet? Well, one of the things that they assured me is that that's not going to happen, that the materials that will go off will be materials from combustion, mainly water vapor and carbon dioxide, the actual burning of natural gas. As we're all aware, natural gas is clean burning, but it still does give off carbon dioxide. That there are no other materials that will be given off. The glycol that's in the system has a higher temperature, it boils at a higher temperature than does water. So if they put it at 300 to 350 degrees, the glycol stays behind, the water boils off. So the actual materials that will be going into the air will be from natural gas burning to boil a glycol tank.
Now, we've also, we've heard that some of this moisture is because of the fracking process, so I don't know if that's a true statement or not, but we've heard that the moisture content was increased because of the fracking. Maybe that's got to be another question they need to answer, because if the moisture is from fracking, when they get rid of the moisture, I can't believe that it's all water vapor. There's got to be some other there's got to be some other chemicals that are dispersed when they distill it or whatever that process is called. Well, this is going through the same process. The FERC Commission is approving this dehydration and the compressor, so... Well, I don't think they're going through the PSC. I think it's all FERC. It's all Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Yeah, basically, we have zero control over what happens with the pipeline. From point to point, we have no control. Once they put a building up above the ground, just like they did over here at Corey Drive, Walmore Road near Corey Drive, then they have to come into the planning board and they have to meet certain conditions and certain rules of the town. And that's what will happen with the dehydration unit. At some point in time, they're going to come in with a site plan, and they're going to be asking for approval to be able to go to Mike and get permits to build. That's when we have the best chance of affecting what goes on. They claim that they're not going to give off anything other than the water vapor and the byproducts of combustion. Yeah. Well, I tend to agree, and we have a lot of experts out there, a lot more expert than I am. I started the process, and I'll put it up on the website, so hopefully we can get to talking about it, and hopefully we'll be prepared by the time it comes to the planning board, I suspect next year. We don't know that for sure. It is definitely fracking gas. They don't hold any bars on that. One of the things that they're saying is that gas in New York State, gas in this area, can have 7 pounds per million cubic feet of water in the material, in the gas. Canadians require 4 pounds per million cubic feet. And the reason for that is Canada's colder. And if they have water vapor that gets into your meters and freezes, that causes them problems. So Canada requires it to be drier. What the gentleman from Mr. Kasperzak from National Fuel said is that the gas in the pipes is generally about 2 pounds per million cubic feet of gas. So if it's generally 2 pounds, he claims that the dryer will very seldom be used, but there are times when it picks up moisture from the ground. There are times, apparently they have big storage units that go down into the ground, big wells, if you will, hundreds of feet deep. and that's where they will do some storage of excess gas, natural gas. And it does pick up some moisture from that. Supposedly coming out of the wells, they do have processing stations that take most of the moisture and hydrocarbon materials away right in Pennsylvania. That was one of John's questions. Why don't they clean it down there? The reason they need to have a dryer farther along is because it can pick up some moisture as it travels, especially from the wells in the ground. And they can't allow it to go across the border unless it's 4 or better. So. Yeah, I'll buy that. Now, they will not hold a meeting here in Wheatfield. Now, when they come to the planning board, I suspect the planning board will require it, but I can't force that, and I don't know that.
Is the town, Wheatfield, going to have an informational session, I think, for residents in the town?
If the residents want an informational session, I'll be more than happy to hold it and participate in it. Okay. Yes, Walt?
Are these appointments going to be residents of the town?
Not every appointment is a resident of the town. We give preference to residents. Ed Mongold is a resident of Tonawanda. I cannot imagine what my life would be like without Ed Mongold. He is...
Well, how about regular employees?
Well, these are appointed positions. They're not necessarily regular employees.
How about people that you hire though, like,
Well, we have the same rule. We have a rule that says that we can give them preference for living in Wheatfield. We try to get, but there is no absolute rule. There was when I came into office, and we found out there were 7 employees that lived outside of Wheatfield. So my point to the board at the time was we either change our rule or get rid of these 7 employees. And we decided to change the rule to allow preference for Wheatfield employees. Certain positions like the one Ed is very hard to fill in town. Yes?
About back to Drexel, I know that those buildings must be up to code that he's put up there.
Right.
But to me, it looks like a project. It does not look like a quality place. Only foreigners would stay there that haven't seen it. You know, there's all those nice hotels that aren't really real expensive. I can't imagine somebody driving along and thinking, oh, that's a place I can stay. You know, I just think we have to get control of some of these.
Well, that would be a real good point to bring up on Wednesday night. That'll be your opportunity. Planning board does not have to allow you to speak, but they generally do. Walt generally does. Paul?
I have something as a resident. I was right here on Maple. We're on the corner from that hotel, whatever you want to call it. And I understand it's for temporary housing, 3 weeks or whatever. Who regulates that? Who's to say that Joe Schmo got out of jail, can't live anywhere else, he's gonna live over there? He's not supposed to.
I don't think anybody regulates. Mike, are you aware of anybody?
I'm just saying, he comes up and they're saying, it comes up and not much, but just in this building it says for temporary housing, people have
Yeah.
fires, or people are there for 3 weeks before it's their time. How do you regulate that from being that to end up being low-cost apartments? Right. That's what I'm saying, there's no way to regulate it, is there?
It would be difficult. You'd have to get the information from somebody and ask a bunch of questions. It's a good question. I think Fiddler Roofing is another example of that. It's right along the boulevard. It is low-income apartments is what it's become.
I'm not really worried about income, I'm worried about some of these other people that get out of jail and aren't supposed
Yeah, well, that's a good point, too.
People there, they're gonna be walking along their boulevard, get to Wilson Farms, and then we're gonna have a lot of foot traffic there, just like we have now between Shawnee and the on Shawnee, and Captain's Landing to the boulevard. There's a lot of people just walking there, and now we're gonna increase traffic on the boulevard. I bet you people are gonna start walking up and down.
Okay.
They're not already, yeah. Yeah, oh, Jeff, so say what you're gonna say.
We had a ambulance caller one night over at Driftwood, and there was a group of college kids that were chaperoned that were staying there from out of state. Well, that's fine, you get down, I pull out with a fire truck coming up the boulevard towards Ward Road, and here's 3 or 4 of them college kids that was in that group walking out in the lane on the boulevard. I almost hit it with a fire truck. So, you know, that can happen anywhere along there, but
Right. Yeah. I hope you understand that this is private property. They have a right to do what they want on that property unless we regulate it and say they can't. And we can't pick and choose. We have to write rules that everybody can follow in order to enforce those rules. We can't just say we like this one and don't like that one. It has to be something that we can comfortably support. That's what the planning board's job is to make sure that they follow the rules, as it is Wendell's job. And they did put a lot into there the last time as far as fixing up the yard. And I think the residents, not so much the planning board, but the residents at that last meeting did make him quite aware that he didn't do what he said he was going to do. So, yeah.
There are rules about how much grass you have to have mowed off the side of the road to a field. And I know that from a farming. I think that we need to hold everybody accountable. Whatever.
Okay, anybody else on any subject? If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
Do we have a...